Hello, listeners. My name is Charles Scott. The program in which you're about to listen to is called Can We Talk? We come to you once a week and we have an informative subject to talk to you about today. We're going to talk about real estate and some of the occurrences that are happening within your area, within the economy, and also give you some helpful tips. My name is Charles Scott. I've been giving you this information along with Eldridge Gloria Brown. She's not here today, so I'm going to hold down the ship and hopefully give you some information that you can pass on to your neighbor or may be useful for you also. One of the things that's happening right now in the economy and in the real estate market is that we've been, as you all know, been going through the pandemic, and there's been a lot of changes as far as real estate, renting apartments, buying homes, and we've had a moratorium. One of the things I want to talk about is the way that you can avoid foreclosure, or in the event that you are in foreclosure, some tips that will help you and assist you in negotiating with your bank and maybe getting you out of that predicament. One of the ways in which you can avoid foreclosure is to make sure you answer all the information and all of the notices that the bank sends out to you. When you get a mortgage, you have two things that occur. One is called a deed, and one is called the mortgage. Where you have a deed, the deed actually, in real estate, it's very different from other types of purchases. In real estate, they actually give you the deed before you end up paying for the house. When you go to a closing, think about this. When you go to a closing, you actually sign two important documents. One, the deed is saying that you own the house. When you walk out of there, the deed has your name on it as being the owner of the property. However, as we all know, you can't go out and sell the house right away because you also have a mortgage on the property. So a lot of people say it's my house, but the bank owns it. So what happens is that the deed is saying you have ownership. The mortgage is saying that that's what's securing that deed. The bank secures the property. If you don't pay the mortgage, then they take the house back. But they cannot just go in and do like they do in an apartment and have an eviction. They have to have a foreclosure. So I'm going to go by today, sort of attempt to give you some of the steps of foreclosure and also some other remedies that you may have. When you buy a house, you have a deed, again, as I said, and you have a mortgage, and you agree to make those mortgage payments. If you do not make those mortgage payments, you give the bank permission to start a foreclosure against you. And what happens is that they can not only start a foreclosure against you if you have a single family house, but if you have a multi-family house and you have different tenants in that particular house, you give them permission to go and collect the rents from those tenants. And they can collect the rents from the tenant, and then they can add that or could put that towards what you owe them in the arrearage. And they can also start legal proceedings against you. So you don't want that to happen. What you want to do is to be able to pay them for that particular mortgage. So let's go through the steps. Once you own the house, usually they don't start sending you notices and they don't start coming after you until you're at least 30 or 60 days late. Usually it's 60 days because they don't know if the payment's late in the mail, and they will send you notices. They'll send you out a notice stating that you are delinquent in your mortgage. Actually, a mortgage company has a right to call the mortgage. What that means, and I've never really seen them do that, is that if you miss a certain amount of payments, they could demand that you pay all the mortgage in full. So if you owe them $300,000 and you miss 2 or 3 payments, they could say you owe us $300,000. We want it all at one time, which is almost impossible. So they call that calling the mortgage, where they ask for all the money at one time. They don't want to do that because, first of all, they know you probably don't have all of that money, or you'd be making the payments in the first place. So what happens is they send a letter out to you, and usually most of these letters are computerized. You know, it's not like somebody sitting there looking at your mortgage and realizing that you made a late payment. You know, the bank may have 100,000 mortgages. They don't have time to sit and monitor every single mortgage. And that's another thing, too, I want to get into. If you get a mortgage from a bank, usually the bank is not the one who collects the money for the mortgage. They give it to a third party called a servicer. That means if you have a bank with a mortgage with XY Bank, that bank will hire someone to collect the money and send out all of the notices to you. It's an in-between third party, and that's the person that you will deal with. But your original mortgage is still with the first bank that you took the mortgage out with. Another thing that banks do, and I'm talking to many of you out there, and you've seen it happen, you get a mortgage, and right away they sell the mortgage. They will sell the mortgage to another bank who's willing to wait longer than they are and collect the interest over the long period of time. So in many cases, a bank will sell the mortgage to another bank, and that bank will be the bank that will send you a letter, and then that bank can sell it to another bank, and that bank can sell it to another bank. However, all of the terms of the mortgage remain the same. So it does. A lot of times people will ask me, well, if they sell the mortgage, can that other bank change my mortgage? No. All of the terms and the mortgage will stay the same. It's just that that other bank has taken over your mortgage. So now let's say you don't make your mortgage payment. They send a letter out to you, and then they'll wait and they send another letter. And, you know, they'll keep sending letters out to you until, you know, they maybe assume you're not living there any longer. So if they think you're not living there any longer, then one of the things that they will do is they may send someone out there to check the house to see if you've abandoned the house. And that person, they'll call a local real estate company, or they'll call, you know, one of their maintenance crews that goes around and checks on their properties. And they go by and they do a drive-by. They don't actually come on the property. They'll go by, drive by the property, you know, see if there's any curtains, see if the doors, if it looks like it's secured, take some photos, see if there's a car in the driveway. So this way, they are going to see if the house is occupied. In the event that you left and you did not secure the property, they have a right to go onto the property and secure the property. In other words, if you leave the doors open, if the windows are up and it's a rainstorm or there's a lot of snow and ice, and you took off and abandoned the property, the bank has a clause in their mortgage where they have a right to go onto that property and secure their interest. And if you've abandoned it, they can go on and they could board up the windows. They could even change the locks. But guess who still owns the property? You do. It's your property. And let's say you were away on vacation. Say you were visiting a relative for the last month, and the bank can't get a hold of you. They're calling. They send somebody by. It looks like it's abandoned. They change the locks. They secure the property, and now you come back. Guess what? You can change the locks back. You can take the boards off. You can move back into the house, or you never left in the first place, because still the deed is still in your name. You own the property. A lot of people have the misconception that once they leave and the bank does that you know, they no longer own the property. But remember, you still own the property. And I've heard of many cases where the people come back and they go back into the house and they occupy the property. So now if the bank calls the police and they say, oh, someone's breaking into the house, and the police come, well, actually, you could show them the deed, or you could show them your ID, and you could say, hey, this is my house. And that's a civil matter. It's not a criminal matter, because you still own the house. They can't keep you from going into your house. And so if you know anybody out there in that situation, you need to tell them that, because a lot of people have a big misconception of that. So once you like I said, get that notice from the bank. If you don't do anything about that notice, and then they will keep sending you letters and sending you letters, then they're going to start a foreclosure, and they can't do that without giving you a notice. And they do what they call a list pendings. That's where they put a notice in the newspaper. They put a notice in and they go to the court system, and they file a list pendings against you. And it's a formal document, formal paper. They put your name on it, the bank's name. And usually they've done a title search, which means that they've gone to City Hall to see if there's any other liens on the property, or if anybody else owes any property, any money, that you owe any money to anybody else, and they put liens on the property. So when they go and they sue you, they sue everybody that is on that lien, or that's on the property that's owed money, because they have to take it back from everybody. And then they all get notices. You get a notice. If you had a car, you didn't pay for the car, and they got a lien on the property, the car company gets a notice. So all of the people get a notice, and they usually have a lawyer that does this, and they have the sheriff come out and serve the notice to you. Or if the sheriff can't fine you, usually they'll leave the notice at the house. And then you have a court date. You have an answer date. You're summoned to court. You have an answer date that you have to answer, and then also an appearance. I'm not going to get into a lot of the legal part of it. I'm not a lawyer, but all I can tell you is that when you get all that paperwork, you need to do something. If you don't do anything, then they will just continue on and on and on and on until they actually end up owning the house. So when you get all of that paperwork, you need to, if you don't understand it, you need to get in touch with a lawyer who can explain it to you. Or either you can also, they have, on the notice, they will have what they call HUD-approved counseling agencies. And you can go and you can get assistance from the counseling agency and, explain to them, what happened, where you are. And the worst thing you can do is ignore the notice. Whatever you do, do not ignore the notice and just sort of hide out and not do anything, because then what will happen is the bank will just continue to go forward. So whatever you do, don't hide out from the bank. Call them on the phone. If they want to hear from you in writing, get in touch with them. So the best thing you can do is talk to them. If you're behind because of COVID, or you're behind because you lost your job, they don't want the house. Most cases, banks do not want the property. They want you to set up some kind of arrangement with them where you can pay them and start making arrangements so that they can get their money back. Banks make money from interest. They want to make money on you and on the interest and the money that you're paying them back. They don't make money on a foreclosure, because now they've got to sell it for a lot less money, and it's a distressed sale. So they end up, not only that, it hurts their portfolio. It hurts all of the other properties. If you have a bank and a bank's got, let's say, 10 mortgages on that street, the value of your house determines the value of the other homes. So if the bank starts foreclosing on a lot of properties, then it doesn't look good for them. So the main thing is that they want to work with you, because they'd rather get, if you borrow $200,000, you're going to pay them back $400,000 or more in interest, in total principal, interest, everything. So they want the money. They don't want to foreclose and sell it for half of what it's worth. So if you get in touch with them, and then they may agree to sit down and talk to you. They could call off the foreclosure, but usually they don't do that. What they'll do, though, is you have your day in court, where you can go to court and plead your case, and you may come to an agreement in the court. They don't like doing anything verbal over the phone. They like to see it in writing. So if you aren't making your payments, they'll give you options. There's a deed in lieu of foreclosures where you can sign the house back over to them. You just sign it over to them and they get the house back. And you can, if you do that, one of the things you want to be concerned about is if you do that, then they may still come after you for the balance after they sell it. So if you owe the bank $300,000 and the house is only worth $200,000, they take it back, they sell it for $200,000. Well, you still owe them $100,000. And they can come after you for the difference and the legal fees and all the other stuff. So you need a lawyer to or a counseling person to sort of make sure you're making the right decision as to how you're going to do it. But when they send those notices out to you, make sure you appear in court, make sure you answer, why you haven't been paying them. And whenever they send notices out to you, make sure you respond to all of the notices that they send you. In some states, foreclosure can be fairly quick. In some states, like Connecticut, it can take a long time. It could take 2 years. It could take 3 years. It could take quite a long time to foreclose on a property. Most people are used to property renters, like where you're renting. Most people are used to renting, and if you're renting and you're in that property, they do an eviction, it could be 3 months or whatever. But when they're foreclosing on a house, it could take quite a while for them to foreclose on that house. So it takes quite a while to go through the process. As long as you answer your notices, and then also as long as you send back any information that they want, you can prolong it. But the main thing is that you want to be able to send that information back to them. I've seen situations where some people sit back, they don't do anything, and it could take 4 months, 5 months, but it's still a process. And with the pandemic that we're just coming through, remember they had a moratorium where the banks could not foreclose on properties. Now we're coming out of that. So I do expect to have a lot of cases on the docket. There's going to be quite a few foreclosures that are going to be sent out to people in different properties, and that's going to be still taking a long time because it's going to clog up the courts. The courts aren't used to 500 or 1,000 foreclosures all at one time. So you have a better opportunity to negotiate with the bank in a situation like that, because the banks really, they don't want to clog up the courts with all of those different foreclosures. So whatever you do, make sure you respond, make sure you write back to the bank, make sure you sit down with the arbitrator at the court and explain your side of the story. Now, like I said, there's the deed in lieu of foreclosure. That's where you sign the house back over to the bank. Then there's another thing called a short sale. Most people will do a short sale too. Now, what's a short sale? Well, it's basically you selling the house on your own with the permission of the bank, and the bank doesn't get all the money. They're still short some of the money. That's why they call it a short sale, because the bank does not get all of the money that you owe them. Say you owe the bank $300,000 and you sell the house for $250,000, well, you still owe the bank $50,000. So they're short $50,000. What's the advantage to you? Well, one thing is you go to the bank and first of all, they're not going to let you do a short sale unless you qualify. They got to give you permission to do a short sale. And because they want to make sure, they may say, well, you haven't been paying us in 6 months, 7 months. Where's all of that money been going? Especially, they don't know if you have a good job. They don't know if you're just trying not to pay them. So they want you to give them some documentation as to why you haven't been paying them. I'll tell you some of the things that they're going to want to see, because I'm in the process of doing some short sales right now. They're going to want to see at least 2 months of bank statements, because they want to see how much money if your mortgage payment is $1,500 a month or $2,000 a month, you haven't paid them in 6-7 months, and you're still working, then they want to see that, make sure that you didn't take all that money and just stash it away in a CD or in the bank and in your savings account, and now you're asking them to let you go without paying them and sell it at a loss, but keep all the money that you should have paid them. So they're going to look at the bank statements. So they're going to look at the last couple of months. If you got $25,000 in your checking account and you haven't paid them, well, that doesn't look too good. They may say, no, we're not going to allow you to do a short sale. Send us our money. So they're going to look at the 2 months of bank statements. The other thing they want to see is your pay stubs. If you're working, they're going to want to see at least 4 pay stubs. The pay stubs will tell them basically how much money you are making, if in fact you are working. So they're going to want to see at least 4 weeks of pay stubs. And that'll show your employer how much money you're making, and any deductions coming out of there. So now they've got your income, they got your savings, and they're going to want to see your last tax return, or maybe 2 years of tax returns, especially if you're self-employed, because that tells them how much money you made on the side or your income. Because remember, why do they need all of these things? Because you're asking them to forgive money that you owe them and help you out. And speaking of that, one of the things that you're going to need is called a hardship letter. What's a hardship letter? It's where you explain why you can't pay them. That's, what is your hardship? Your hardship is, okay, you lost your job. Your hours were cut. When you ask them for permission to do a short sale, they're going to send a package out in the mail to you. And usually it's about 20 pages, but it's not all that hard to fill out. And because they just did one over the weekend, they're going to ask your name, the address, your employer if you're working, the pay stubs, the bank statements. They're going to ask for you to sign a form where they check with the IRS to make sure that the tax return you gave them is valid. Make sure you just didn't go and change the figures around. They'll look at that, and they'll also want to see maybe a utility bill to see that you still have the lights and the gas on in the building, and that you're actually living there in the building. They will also want to see, and this is important, an income statement and an expense statement. The income statement, what's that do? It tells them, how much money you're making. You're working here, you got a part-time job here. If you're on Social Security, they're going to ask to see the award letter showing how much Social Security is paying you. And if you're on disability, they're going to ask to see how much disability is giving you. So you put down there, all of the income. Now, the other part is expenses. And you're going to put on the expenses, you got a car payment, you got lights, gas, telephone, household expenses, principal, interest, your mortgage. Even if you're not paying, you still got to put it down there. And all your other bills, how much you spend for insurance and medical care, whatever it may be. So what are they doing with this information? So on one side, they have all your bills and all your expenses. On the other side, they've got your income. Well, guess what? What you're doing is you're telling them, I can't afford this house. I can't afford to pay this mortgage, because with the mortgage and all my other bills and the household expenses, it all comes to $4,000 a month. And I've only got $2,500 a month coming in. So the numbers don't work right there. So they are looking and saying it's only a matter of time before this person is totally going to abandon this house and not be able to pay for it. And they're saying they can't pay for it now. So this is a good candidate to do a sale of the property. Let's let them sell the property. Now, how does that benefit you? Versus you having to move out immediately and they foreclose on the property, and now it shows on your credit report as a foreclosure, they will allow you to stay in the house and list the property with the real estate company and try and sell the house. And you don't have to, how are you going to sell a house for $350,000 that's only worth $250,000? So they realize that. Because before you list the house, the real estate agent will tell you how much they think the house is worth. Also, the bank will send someone out. Usually it's a BPO, broker's price opinion, where they send somebody out to look at the house to give them an idea of what they think the house is worth. So when the bank looks down at the records and they say, oh, this house is only worth $250,000, the person owes us $350,000, so we're going to let the person sell it for $250,000 or the highest that they can get. So now you are able to put the property on the market for less money than what you owe them. And the benefit to you is you're still living in the house, so it may take 6 months, 7 months to sell the house, or however long, not however long it takes. They're not going to let you stay there forever, but they're going to let you stay in the house while you're trying to sell the house. It benefits the bank because now the bank doesn't have to worry about you abandoning the house, someone breaking into the house, stealing the pipes, damaging the property, because if that happens, now the house is even worth less money to them. So they want you to babysit the house. So you go in there and you stay in there and you try and sell the house. Now, what is the biggest benefit to you? It doesn't show on your credit report as a foreclosure. It shows as paid for less than agreed. So now you don't have the foreclosure on your record. So later on, maybe you can go, usually in most cases it's 3 years or depending upon the mortgage, you can buy another house later on down the road. Now, it's very important that when you do the short sale, that you get the bank to agree not to come after you for the difference of the money. Now, that's a good benefit. So you sold it for $250,000, you owe the bank $350,000, but now they agree not to come chasing you for the other $100,000. So as you can see, that's called a short sale. So that's some of the things, or one of the things that I do. So hopefully now when you hear the word short sale, you know what it's all about. My name again is Charles Scott. Hopefully I gave you some informative information today to share with you or your neighbors. And again, until next week, God bless and shalom.